My name's Anthony Borton. I'm an ALM trainer consultant with Enhance ALM, based out of Brisbane, and I've basically dedicated the last 5 years to helping organisations adopt TFS. So going in there and deploying TFS, getting it running, getting it configured, helping teams with their ALM, getting the process template customised and so on. Who's using TFS so far? All right, so that looks well over half the room. Fantastic. Who's got a Visual Studio license with an MSDN subscription? Excellent. So you guys all have TFS 2010, but I didn't see all of those things. You realise that TFS is now just bundled up as part of the licensing with an MSDN subscription. You don't have to buy it anymore if you have that subscription. That's great news. So the purpose of my talk here this afternoon for you is to talk a little bit about a very compelling feature in Visual Studio 2010. And that compelling feature is around lab management. There was a rather exciting announcement made at VS Live recently. Does anyone know what the announcement was that I'm referring to? Silence. Was it Light Switch? Oh, that might be exciting, but not what I'm talking about. It was a change to the licensing model for lab management, where previously the expectation was that lab management would be licensed based on the physical processor of the machines that lab management manages. That's now changed, and lab management, for all those people that put their hands up before, is now effectively free. More to the point, let me be more specific, lab management is just a capability of Visual Studio. It's just part of the feature set now for particular products within the range. That's pretty exciting news. It means that hopefully that'll remove perhaps one of the barriers for you to adopt this technology back in the workplace. I want to talk about a couple of usage scenarios. The first one that I'm going to introduce to you is a guy called Developer Dave. Now, Developer Dave has a few problems there. He's sick of poor quality bug reports. Who's ever received a bug report that sounds something like, "It's broken"? I'd say a few people have. Pretty exciting sort of bug report, isn't it? There's another one there. He wastes hours looking for bugs that he can't find. So he invests a lot of time and effort looking for things that don't exist. That's not exactly a rewarding pursuit. He marks many of those bugs that he receives as no repro. He can't reproduce the bug, therefore he can't fix it. And he wastes hours manually deploying apps for testers. So every time there's a new drop available, it takes him hours to get that deployed out to the new servers or to the refreshed servers before our testers can do any work. We've got Tina Tester. Tina doesn't like developers. Tina's frustrated by developers claiming that her bugs don't exist, not believing her. Can you believe that? There's a long-held belief, I think, that developers have that the bug's not a real bug until it's reported at least twice. Yep. Don't tell the testers about that. She's sick of reopening bugs that have been marked as no repro. That's dreadfully inefficient and, again, not rewarding for her. And 30% of the bugs that she reports and puts a lot of information and effort into has nothing to do with the application under test. They're environmental issues. So someone in IT basically throws together a machine perhaps. She said we need a 64-bit version of Windows. They just go and run setup.exe almost, and here it is, without really understanding the application prerequisites and so on. So she's raising bugs unnecessarily. I'll also introduce you to Tester Tanya. So Tester Tanya's tired of waiting days for IT to get machines ready for a testing. How many of you support applications that go out into the public domain? Anyone? So again, well over half. So you really should be testing perhaps your applications against what operating systems? Potentially right back to XP, hopefully not much further back than that. XP with its service pack, 64-bit, 32-bit, Vista with its service pack, 64-bit, 32-bit, Windows 64, 32-bit, perhaps some server operating systems, lots of different browsers. Sound close? And how many of you reliably test on all of those? All right. Let the record show that was no hands. Why is that? It's too time consuming, it's certainly too expensive in most cases. In a lot of examples, organisations will simply choose to deal with that problem by cutting back the OSs they support. I mean, it'd be nice from a marketing perspective to say, hey, we'll support everything you want to throw at us, our product's going to work, come and buy it. But that's just not realistic either. Tester Tina also has the oldest PC in the group, so she can't really easily test against the latest operating systems. And she's sort of, sitting out in the corridor too. As a tester, she doesn't get treated very well. She ends up skipping a lot of tests as well due to time pressures. And then finally, IT Ian. IT Ian there can't believe the amount of time that he spends getting machines ready for testers. It seems like every week they need another couple of machines, and it's like, what happened to the machine I made last week? Oh, we changed its configuration during testing and it's gone. So he has to start again. He can't understand why developers can't get their apps to work reliably on his hardware. So he spends a lot of his time sitting with developers, manually helping them deploy software to the various machines. So guys, I've given you 4 scenarios there. There's more, but I figured 4's more than enough. How many of you can relate to at least one of those? Maybe not yourselves, but someone in your workplace. Can you relate to any of those scenarios? Okay, so that's most of you. Excellent. So I just want to introduce you to Team Foundation Server 2010. It's a requirement for our lab management. It's our centralised hub for the team. Version control happens there. Bug tracking happens there. And of course now with 2010, test case management occurs there. We had a great offering in 2005, 2008 for test case management. Who knows what it was called? It was Excel. It was Excel. It was very popular. It's been around for ages. Didn't have to train anyone on it. That's what most of our testers used. I mean, it had great integration with TFS. Don't get me wrong. You could check it into one of the document libraries. It provides build automation for us. So a build lab out of the box. And it is a requirement, as I said earlier, for the Visual Studio Lab Management features. So the lab management features of Visual Studio 2010, up until that announcement at VS Live, I would have been talking about a separate or a new product. Now, of course, as I've stated, we're now talking about some features that are inside Visual Studio. We can automate virtual machine provisioning. We can create checkpoints, snapshots as needed, without necessarily having a knowledge of Hyper-V, without necessarily having a knowledge of System Center Virtual Machine Manager. We can test and debug in multiple different environments nice and easily. It does require TFS, and it does require Microsoft Test Manager 2010. So Test Manager 2010 is also brand new. It's available to you either through Visual Studio 2010 Ultimate Edition, or you can purchase it as a separate product, as part of the Test Professional 2010 suite. And that was another big change from 2008. In 2008, there was Visual Studio Team Edition for software testers, which was a little bit odd because a lot of those testers never wanted to see code. And we didn't really want them seeing code or potentially touching it. So the company ended up spending a lot of money for features that our testers should never have really used, never wanted to use, but there was a reasonably high price point to get into. So Test Professional is a lot less expensive, and it is a custom WPF application designed exclusively for our testers. They don't need to see Visual Studio. They're happy about it. As developers, we're happy about it too. The lab management features of Visual Studio also includes a license for System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2008 R2. And that's one of the requirements. It does all the heavy lifting for us in terms of lab management. And then lab management itself, just a reminder there that it comes as part of Visual Studio 2010 Ultimate. So long as you've got your MSDN subscription there, it's basically everything out of the box. Our IntelliTrace, which works nicely with lab management as well. The Microsoft Test Manager 2010 product is included in Ultimate, and we also get some great architecture and modeling tools. And then down the bottom there, I've just made that point. Visual Studio Test Professional 2010 with MSDN also gets to use lab management. All right. So I want to start by looking at a logical configuration. Lab management is really designed, and you'll see this in a moment, for corporate environments. Lots of moving pieces, lots of virtual machines. That's one of its key benefits. So, running it on a laptop is not a recommended strategy. You will see that. And in fact, I've taken a few little liberties to make the demonstrations a little bit more palatable for you. We're going to start with Active Directory. Who's got an Active Directory? Yeah, all of us. That is a requirement. It's actually a requirement for System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So you've got to have lab management. You've got to have the domain environment to get started. If we have a look up there, System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Who's using SCVMM already? So SCVMM is designed to allow us to manage virtual machines. We can create template libraries, we can P2V, we can do many, many things. I'm not going to turn it into an SCVMM talk. But we're going to have one of those guys. And then we're going to have our VM library. And the VM library is going to be full of things called golden images. Now, how we go about creating a golden image is that we will go into perhaps Hyper-V, we'll go and mount an ISO, and what operating system do you think we should install? What client operating system? You can say anything that isn't OS X. Windows 7, good choice. So we're going to install Windows 7, 32-bit, 64-bit. Do you have a preference? 64-bit. Ah, excellent. Now you're working with me. This is good. So 64-bit Windows 7 we're going to install. And we will configure that so as a client operating system, maybe we want to test a web application. So we're going to put some servers in there as well. Or maybe we're testing just a smart client application. We will then go and put any prerequisite software on there that we need. We might put some shortcuts there for convenience. And then I'm going to take advantage of the VM prep tool, which is a really neat little thing off Codeplex. And what that allows me to do, or what that makes nice and easy for me, is the installation of the build agent, the test agent, and the workflow agent. That gets installed onto that machine. I then choose to clone the virtual machine and then create a template from it. And the template's effectively sysprepped. So we take away a lot of the specifics of the machine so that we can easily reuse it, and now we store it in a template library. Sound reasonable enough? Something the IT guys should be very familiar with. Now, in addition to that operating system that you kindly volunteered for us, we might spend some time. We might go and create a 32-bit Windows 7. And if we're going out to public with our applications, then we'll probably go and create the Vista stack, and we'll do an XP stack there as well. Again, we don't really want to acknowledge anything before that. But so long as the VM can run under Hyper-V, we can do it. Now, it could be quite a complex environment we want to create for the application. The application that you create might integrate with Active Directory, and it might need an Exchange server, and it might need a clustered pair of SQL boxes, middle tier boxes, and so on. We can create all of those and place them into the template library. All right? So that's pretty straightforward. It takes a little bit of time depending on how many configurations you need, but you just do them once. The next thing we do is we wire those guys up, and we have a Hyper-V host. So a Hyper-V host is where these environments are going to run. Now, a Hyper-V host, by definition, is a greedy little bugger. You won't find that in the documentation. And what I mean by that is it's going to have lots of cores. We're going to throw gobs of memory at it, and it's going to have some nice, fast disks. And in fact, we may end up having several of these. It just depends on the number of testers, the number of simultaneous environments you need to run, and the nature of the application. As a simple Windows Smart Client application, we might only have just a single machine in the environment. So we could easily, on a typical server, maybe run half a dozen without even batting an eyelid. But for your application over here, where we need to go and virtualize our domain controller and our Exchange box and all these sorts of things, we might be pushing a single Hyper-V host to run so many machines. It just depends. All right. So we're going to use System Center Virtual Machine Manager. It's going to talk to our Hyper-V host or hosts. We can create host groups. So within the same company, I can allocate some hosts in a group for you and allocate some hosts in a group for you just to make sure you don't fight, just to divide up the resources a little bit. In the equation, we have TFS and lab management included. We also have a build server there as well. Now, lab management, in addition to the announcement at VS Live that it was a lot more financially palatable, what was the other really exciting news that they gave us? You're not very good with these guessing games, I've noticed. It's the post-lunch, sleepy time. They announced its release. So where pretty much everything else in the 2010 stack was released back in April, lab management was not. So lab management is now released. You can download that GDR and install that today. Okay? So 2 big announcements in the area of lab management. We're also going to have our developers. They're fairly important people. And the testers. We'll tend to separate them a little bit. They don't play nice today. And our developers are going to use TFS. They're going to put their source code there. They're going to fire off some builds. The build server is going to go and talk to the Hyper-V host. And this is where it gets very interesting. So we can now say that in deploying our application, we want to go and spin up all of your machines. We might want to just go and spin up a smaller environment. And as part of that build, let's provision those machines out, deploy the applications out onto them, execute some coded UI tests on them. Let's really push the envelope in terms of automated testing. I've got some interesting builds there. Our testers then can hit those environments with a lovely WPF application. They can then do their testing. They can create screenshots. They can get IntelliTrace logs. They can go in there and take snapshots of the entire virtual machines. So in terms of no repro bugs, or a developer claiming, no, that bug doesn't exist, we can now say, well, look, here's the environment. I've snapshot every machine in the environment, and all you've got to do is double-click this LVR link, and we'll take you straight back there. Rather hard to deny it now. And as a live environment, the developer is able to bounce around any machines in the environment in a live and interactive way, look back through our logs, look back through the event logs if you wanted to do that. That's fantastic in terms of getting to the bottom of these problems nice and quickly. Our testers can then raise those bugs back up into TFS. And there's some builds there that we don't need anymore. So, using virtual environments to test and debug. There was once upon a time where you'd walk into an organization that had to do testing on multiple configurations, and it was quite common to see that that have a big room and benches around the wall, and above each machine was its configuration. So to test on each of those configurations, you'd go to machine 1, run your test. Go to machine 2, do the testing. Now virtualization has changed a lot of that. So it's quite likely now that most testers in the room, perhaps even developers, are using virtualization for the purpose of their testing. Yes? Okay. Hopefully you are. So let's go and have a look at how we can configure and set up some of these environments. Okay. And we're there. So I'm just going to go into my virtual machine. And remember all of those moving parts that I spoke to you about? The slide with all the pieces on it? Pretty much all of that's sitting inside one VM. Sort of like a Franken VM. So you need to forgive its performance just a wee bit. Laptop hard drives aren't the fastest things around. So what I've done here is, if I just switch across, what you're looking at is the Microsoft Test Manager. Normally, you'd see a screen like this, and what our testers can do is they can go over here and they can create test suites. You'll see I've got some automated tests, some manual tests. They can go in there and they can create these test cases. We can go and create shared steps for reusability. We can do a whole lot. But that's not what this talks about. So instead I'm going to switch from the testing center across to the lab center. It goes green, so it must be better. And in our nice little green UI, you'll see that I've got one environment I've already created. I can go in there and say, well, look, I want to deploy an environment from the library. And you'll see that I have a number of environments already created. I've got a standard Tailspin environment for the sample application. I've got an isolated environment, which I'll take a moment to talk to you about shortly. And I've got a multi-machine environment as well. So I can easily deploy out to, deploy a typical N-tier application out across multiple machines. Now I won't click deploy environment. That just takes a wee tad of time. So I'll say don't deploy. Instead I can go over here and say that I want to create a new environment. Okay? So I'll say I want to create a new virtual environment and I get to provide it a name. So I'm going to call that TechEd New Zealand app. That'll do. Not very creative today. And I go in and choose the host group that I want to send that to. But then the most interesting thing is when we go down to machines. And when I select machines, you'll see that I've got Tailspin VM template. In all likelihood, the person using this particular application is going to be a test lead. Now that test person won't necessarily understand Hyper-V, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, but do you see any of that up here? We have our templates down the right-hand side. All right. So give me an example of one of the servers your apps run on. 2008. A 2008 R2 box. Excellent. So nice 64-bit server. We could throw IIS on there as one of the roles, and there's a web box. Now that can sit on the right-hand side as a template, and whenever we need that for testing, we can just bring one of those into the mix. Or, potentially, we can bring a couple. Just drag them on across. I can list all of my clients down there as well. These are just templates sitting in the template library. So you're starting to get the drift? Excellent. All right. I can go in and change the machine properties. Once these have been created as templates, I can go in there and set the name of the machine. I can go in there and set some other properties. Let me show you. So I'll pick this guy up. Could have sworn I could drag and drop that. Anyway, so I've just brought that one across. I can go and provide a role for it. And this particular role, just to help me use it, might be, in this case, a web server. Now I can bring the same template across, if it's just a Windows Server 2008 R2 box, and task this one as being my database server. I can go into the machine properties, and you'll see that I can say, well, this server, configured as a web box, needs to have this amount of memory. I can go to the OS profile, and I can work my way through it. I can give it a specific name if I want to, although an auto-generated name helps a lot with network isolation. I'm coming to that one. Some admin passwords, I can put in a product key, although if these are going to be itinerant machines, sort of coming and going, I probably wouldn't put a product key in there. You might go through your activations very quickly that way. I can specify time zone, whether it's domain joined and so forth, and I can put some friendly tags on there to help me identify what's on the machine. I can have a look at the capabilities. Can I run tests on this machine, or do I intend to? My workflows to go and deploy things out there, and do I want to enable network isolation? Now, this is a huge thing, so just let me talk to you about that for a moment. We've gone and created our environment. Now, I've picked on the guys up the front. How about I walk up the back and ask some questions? Okay, I'm worn out already. How many testers in the team? 2. I can work with 2. If we give them the exact same environment to work in, do you think they're going to interfere with each other? Yeah. Absolutely. So, if we go and create a complex environment with multiple machines, and then I allow 2 or more testers to RDP in and start doing their testing of my application, that's generally not going to work. It could be a financial application, so one of them's doing end of financial year processing and changing all the data in the database, while the other one's just trying to do some end of month. So what's the solution to that, do you think? What's the only really workable way? Sack the other guy? Don't laugh, it'll work. If we get rid of one of our testers, we're in business. But a better way is to create two identical environments. Now, what's the problem of creating two identical environments and bringing them up at the same time? Who's a network engineer? All right. What's the problem of bringing up two identical environments with multiple machines at the same time? And what else? Excellent. And if they're domain controllers or DHCP servers, we've just created a big mess. Excellent observation. So by simply checking the checkbox there that said network isolation, what do you think that might do for us? That might do some really neat stuff in the network stack. It might stop all outbound public broadcasts for traffic. It might then avoid any IP address conflict issues by using a particular pool of IP addresses. It might automatically stop broadcast packets telling us that we've got this name without me needing to go and recreate a whole, I don't want to create an environment for tester 1 and recreate a separate one for tester 2. I want to create it once and spin up multiples. Would that be a time-saving thing? So your example was you just had 2 testers, but let's say we've got 6 testers. So each of them can have their own dedicated environment, fully featured. I only need to create it once, and all I need to do is make sure that I have sufficient capacity on my Hyper-V hosts to run that number of environments. That's network isolation. Pretty cool? Okay, not bad at all. So, I'll go down to my summary. And I can go in there and finish that. Now, I'm not going to do that at the moment, so let me just get out of there. And once I've created that, I can grab the environment, and as an entire environment, I can push that back into the template library. So I can bring that back and reuse that as often as I like. When I'm then ready to start using this, I can select the environment, and I can start it. Okay. Now, the issue about this, one of the reasons why I'm choosing not to actually run it for you just now, these machines exist as typically VHD files. They sit in a template library in my machine inside a VM. Now, if I were to deploy this, what do you think needs to happen to those machines? They need to then get copied out to the Hyper-V host, which is also the same laptop hard drive. How big is your average server-based VHD? Yeah, they're a wee bit sizable. Now, so long as, and guys, don't get me wrong, it's an issue for my laptop. In a corporate network environment where we've got a good, strong server backplane there, where we've got some nice attached storage or direct attached storage, this isn't such a big deal. And you can make these happen overnight as well. So I'm just going to cheat for a moment in the interest of really not having you sit there watching the screen too long. This is a video that I recorded in my room up over the road and upstairs a little earlier. So I'm just going to speed through that a little bit. We've gone in there, we've connected to our team project using Test Manager. We've gone into lab. I've said deploy. Remember on my real machine, you saw there was one there already? This is it. I choose the Tailspin environment. In my case, I've only got one host group, and I say deploy the environment. Now, this is time-lapse. I'm completely upfront about that. In fact, I even included a little call-out to tell you that. So this is happening 10 times faster than it did earlier. So it's creating the virtual machine environment. It's got to move about 11 gig. So it's using bits under the covers to move those files around for me. So much better watching it this way. It is. We then go in there, we configure the workflow, the environment's created. Now that's where we would have used sysprep, we would have changed the memory, would have given it a machine name. I'm now going to start the environment. So we prepare to start that environment. Now it's a single machine environment, again, just a limitation of my laptop. We then want to connect to it, and we're going to use the Microsoft Environment Viewer. And what that shows us now is all of the machines that exist in this environment, and then we can interact with that machine. I'm going to go and log on there. Again, it's a lot sexier if you see a whole swag of machines down the left-hand side here. Prepares our desktop. And now, this has got the test agent installed. So this test agent just pops up here. The actual visual appearance there is just for our edification to say that it's working. We're currently disconnected. The agents then wire up. We're now online. Now, I want to be able to come back here quickly and easily. So what I'm going to do is go up to Snapshots. And I'm going to say, take a snapshot here, please. And I'm going to call it Clean State. And I'll take that snapshot. And what that means now is I can easily, very quickly, revert back to that exact point in time. Okay? So what you've seen there is how we can go about provisioning environments quickly. The next thing I want to talk about then is build automation. So for the developers in the room, how often do you need to go and deploy your applications, or who has to perform the task of deploying your applications to a test region? Well, not so many. It's not a fun thing, generally speaking. Make the testers do it. How does that work for you?
It's gotten better.
It's gotten better. I like that. All right. So build automation makes this a lot easier for us. So instead of the current options that are available in, say, TFS 2008, I want to increase that. I want to do a build. I then want to automate the deployment of my application into this environment. And then I want to automate the execution of my tests. I want my coded UI tests to execute automatically for me, with probably an end goal of having that occur perhaps overnight. So every time we drop a new build overnight, so long as everything works okay, we revert back to that snapshot. We auto-deploy the application out onto one or more machines. We then automate as many of those tests as we possibly can, so that by the time people come to work in the morning, the application's there, we're looking at the test results, and then really it's just up to the testers to complete those last manual tests. Would that be a time-saving thing for us? Yeah? I agree with you. It is potentially a huge saving for a development team. All right. So let's go to the next step and have a look at some of that build automation. Now, I've done the same thing, so I'll walk you through it, but then we'll let the video just close it off. I think this one was a 22-minute process again. So in the interest of not having you sit there watching my screen for 22 minutes, I've got a video to... Sorry? All right, so I'm going to go across, back into my VM, pop out of there for a moment, and I'm in Visual Studio. I'm going to have a look for Tailspin, and under my builds, you see I've got a number of builds already created for me. The one I'm going to show you is the build, deploy, and test of Tailspin. Let's right-click and have a look at it. I should have videoed this bit. It's generally not such a time-consuming process to click on Edit Build Definition. I'm just going to let that have a moment to think about it and do other things. There we go. So what I've got here, you may well have seen before. Who's created a build definition in CFS? Nice. Excellent. So I'm going to go in there. I've given it a name. It's a manual trigger in this particular occurrence. My workspace mappings are there. I've chosen the build controller. Now what I see here is I've chosen one of the templates available out of the box. And this particular template is the lab default template. I'm going to go down here and say, well, let's have a look at some of the sections in this. So it's going to fire up a wizard for me. I'll click Next. It says, what environment are you using? So remember, I could have created and placed multiple environments into the template library. I'll choose Tailspin. And what I want to do is I want to be able to revert back to a previous snapshot. So I believe I'll have the checkbox checked, and I then go and choose which snapshots are available to me. And I'm going to just start with a fresh one. But just have a look at this list for a moment. Actually, not specifically that list. Using a financial application as an example, where do we get our sample data from? So imagine for a financial application, Lewis has got to do some testing on a fresh install. No data. He's going to start a new company file and he's going to start entering data into a clean system. We've got to be able to test that. Okay? We're also going to have someone start testing month-end functionality. So we're closing off the financial month. We've got to then do some reporting. So you need to have a month of data already available. And you, sir, are going to have a look at year-end data. Quite common things. So what I want you to do is to just envisage those snapshots named slightly differently. Clean state, month data, and one called year data. We then have our build definitions appropriately named. So if you want to go in there and have a year's worth of data to start, you've got a snapshot for it, you choose it from a drop-down list, say, let's go with that build, please, and you're in an environment with a year of data. And your testing might be quite destructive. Your testing might go and change all of that data. I mean, that's common for testing, isn't it? Executing one test may then change the state, so you can't run the test again. So, of course, with snapshots, we can revert in a matter of moments. We can go back there and say, well, look, I've just done that year-end processing test 1. Ready for year-end processing test 2. Revert snapshot, nice and clean. It's like a really energized version of test initialize if you're familiar with unit testing, but just a whole lot more. All right? So multiple snapshots, and as part of the build definition, we get to choose which one to go to. The next step in the wizard, I want to go and choose the build definition. So which build do I want to use? I can queue a new build, or I can go and select an existing build. So I can pop the list down and say, well, look, this is the one. This is the candidate that I want to do my testing for right now. Now, this could be version 2. It could be last week's drop last Friday that I haven't had a chance to start testing on yet. They're just all listed for me. I can also say use a build from a specific location. So I've got a lot of options there. I want to deploy this build. So how are you going to go about that deployment? So for each of you that work deploying applications, every app is enormously different, typically. There's no such thing as setup.exe, click finish. Well, I haven't seen that app for a long, long time. A lot of applications require us to go and install digital certificates over here, and we've got to go and set this connection string up, or who knows what. So we go in here and we can specify which VM in the environment, and we then have some files, some scripts, telling me how to go and deploy the application. And I can use MS Deploy to push the web application out to the web box. Notice here I've only got one machine, but I could say on the database server, go and deploy this database schema. When we've deployed the application, I can then take another snapshot. I can say, go and create a post-deployment snapshot. So this is where we've made the choice to say we're doing some year-end processing. It's all been deployed to our environments. So then we can do some testing and revert the entire environment, regardless of how many machines are in it, back to this nice clean state. And I'll click Next. I want to choose to run some tests automatically, entirely up to me, so I check the box. I choose the test plan that contains them. I choose the suite, and I'm choosing my automated test suite, not the manual test suite. That's a bit counterproductive. The test configuration I'm going to be using is Windows 7 IE8. And I can go in there and choose the particular test settings that I want to use. And I'll click Finish. Now what that'll do then is when I go right-click and Queue New Build, that's where the action starts. And again, about 20 minutes on my overworked laptop. So let me just pop back out of here again and just show you what that would look like. I know it's a lot nicer to see it actually happening, but again, the time just didn't make that possible in the room. So I say Queue New. Ooh, I videoed that last section, so we can skip ahead. And now I should be queuing that build. Okay, all the defaults apply, so I just click on Queue. And let's see what occurs. So my build appears, I double click on it. So let's see what's going to go on there. It's going to go in there. I'm going to open that environment up to watch it close, strangely enough. So here it is. One of the first instructions was to do what? Revert to a previous snapshot. There it is closing. So I've gone back to a previous snapshot now. I'm going to reconnect just to show that it comes back. Remember, this is time-lapse, this isn't real time. My machine comes back in a nice clean state. I switch back across to Visual Studio to see what else it's doing. It's running the deployment scripts for me, telling it how that application needs to be deployed out onto all of the one machines in the demo. So it executes those scripts. And then the next thing we told it to do was to snapshot it. So it takes another post-deployment snapshot for me. And then it's going to move into the tests. So just here that popped up and said running tests. And what you're seeing there is happening in the environment. It's going and executing a coded UI test, which I think that application actually has a fault in it. So it should deliberately break with a lack of feature here. And give me a 503 or not? Nope, we're happy. So it's gone through and it's executed the coded UI test for me. I've got to say it wasn't an overly interesting coded UI test. And then we pop back to Visual Studio. And what you see there was just that single test. But wow, that's really hard to see. All right, what that is telling you is that our coded UI tests have actually passed one test of one, which isn't a big deal. But what triggered everything that you saw happen there? Remember the right-click on the build definition. Once that was set up, I simply went right-click, Queue a New Build. And it was hands-off. I took no further part in what you saw occur next. The fact that it did the build, the compile for me. The fact that it reverted those snapshot machines. The fact that it then deployed the application out there. It took another snapshot I can easily revert back to. It then went and executed those tests automatically for me. And I come to work and see hopefully some good news there. Or perhaps some tests failed. Lewis has put some bugs in there for me to find. And I get to work having a look at the cause of those issues. What do you think? A question, please, sir.
How and where are the snapshots stored?
The snapshots are basically maintained with System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So those snapshots are on one of the Hyper-V hosts for me.
Is it just the Delta? Or
Yeah. That's all they are. So really, if you think about it, how big were those snapshots likely to be? And don't get me wrong, they can be quite large. In my simple example, we had our Windows Server pre-configured and set up. I then deployed a web application and took another snapshot. How big do you think that may have been? How big is a web application? A meg, couple of meg? I mean, there could be some data on there. Guys, it could be 100 meg. It's not generally significant. There's a power tool in the works at the moment that will then also allow us to go back and look at the space that's being currently utilised and to do a lot of that cleanup for us. So, I mean, the main thing there, I suppose, and where the question may have been leading, was we need certainly some potentially big Hyper-V hosts with some good fast disks, dependent upon how complex the environments are for the applications you run. I've got one customer in Melbourne using Lab Management in production at the moment. Each of their environments has 13 machines in it. And they run 3 testers, so 3 simultaneous copies of 13 machines. And that might sound like a lot. The interesting thing about that is, well, it needs to be done. So previously it was taking them 2 weeks to get through the cycle. Now they're doing it in less than 2 days through that automation. But they've got some good grunty 72 gig RAM, 16 core CPUs and so forth. There was a question just there, I think it was first.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of answered it for me. It's like I'm a SharePoint developer in most environments, and I deal with a minimum of 10 servers attached to it.
Okay, so firstly, my condolences. But yeah, so long as the hardware supports the environments, then you're home and host, and that could be significant. Okay, there was another question just there.
Does all of this deal with the interfaces to VMware as a VMhost instead of?
Okay, so basically in the early, I think Beta 1 did show support for both Hyper-V and the VMware product. Unfortunately, that had to reach the cutting room floor in order to ship the product. So while it's certainly highly desirable, the VMware support didn't make it in version 1. Okay, and that's not a great story. I know that a lot of organisations out there are well invested in the VMware product. Unfortunately, not V1. Okay, it was there in the early days, and it was just man hours. I think, Lewis, you were next.
Can you run the Windows Phone 7 emulator as part of it?
So at this stage, there's no support for Windows Phone 7 as far as I know. Which the bigger picture around that also includes some of the Silverlight story. So Silverlight's support for a lot of the automated testing is not currently in the box. They're looking at adding that before year end. 2 more quick questions. I saw another hand there.
I'm just a web developer, and for a typical server and client kind of scenario to PC,
Yes.
what kind of server config you read to try this? How much memory you need?
Okay, so the question is that you create web applications. It's typically just a simple, lightweight client, and then the web server. So what sort of server do I need to get started? Well, I guess you could probably answer that better yourself for me. So the web server, assuming it's just a Windows Server 2008 box with IIS installed on there, I mean, you tell me, what sort of configuration would you need to run? You'd probably get it running in 2 gig without too many problems, depending on what the app did. And then your client, it's just really a life support system for a browser. So assuming that's just going to be like a Windows 7 box, you'll get that running in 1 gig. It's running on my netbook fantastically well. So the type of server could be probably just a standard 8 gig. You'd want to make it maybe a dual core box. That'd be a starting point. And I think there was one last question before I move on.
About sharing isolated environments across multiple Hyper-V hosts.
So at this stage, and I'm only 98% sure of this, a single managed environment must be placed on a single host today. Yeah. I mean, to do the consolidated snapshotting and those sorts of things, I don't believe there's an alternate story for that just yet. Okay. So let me just continue. So I'm going to jump back out of that video now and switch machines. So let's see what we've done for our wonderful usage scenario. So developer Dave and tester Tina, they weren't happy people before. So developer Dave is much happier. Developer Dave has bug reports that contain a great deal of information. And I'll actually jump in and show you that, assuming I don't, depending on how we're going for time in a moment. He's greatly reduced the time to find the cause of the bug. He can't remember the last time the bug was no repro, and he can deploy his applications now in just 10 minutes. He's a lot happier coming to work. We have a look at tester Tina. She's completing full test coverage in half the time that it took before. Has not had a bug marked, no repro in months, and she's actually going out with a developer. That's extraordinary. We have a look at tester tenure. Provisions environments now in less than 15 minutes. Not the days that it was taking before, where she'd have to, make pleas to ITE and come on, I need the environment. So 15 minutes, the environments are ready for her. She now tests against 8 different configurations and is now testing the upcoming IE9 CTP just to see what it's going to look like. And that could be our environment tests against 8 different environments today. And someone sort of says, well, look, we know that IE9 is just around the corner. We've heard it's got some great advantages in there. Let's just go and create a little web client. Let's go and put IE9 CTP on there. Throw that into the mix. Let's find out quickly and easily if our app's going to be nice and compatible with that from the get-go. Has time to double the number of tests she did previously. So now there's not so much time spent waiting and relying on other people. So tester tenure is able to invest that extra time to create better tests and more of them. ITE creates and updates those golden images once a month, but generally gets left alone now. He's not had to spend hours with our developers trying to get their apps to work each week. So it's been a big win for ITE and for the business because he's able to get back onto standard IT support tasks. Now I'll show you some related content, but then I've fortunately got a couple of extra minutes there. I want to show you actually recording a rich bug. Okay? So before I move off that slide, so advanced user interface testing with coded UI tests is a session that I'm doing tomorrow at 11:50, so that's over in New Zealand 4. So I'm going to talk about coded UI and automating functional testing. There's also some great sessions there on Visual Studio tips and tricks, and I've included implementing TFS 2010 a real-world perspective, which is great. It's the story of an organisation that has gone on the path to adopting TFS. So what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, how'd they go migrating from Visual SourceSafe? I'll also make mention of the New Zealand ALM conference. So it's coming up either at the end of March or the second week of April, I believe. That's going to be held down in Wellington. So that'll be all around application lifecycle management. So hopefully I'll get to see quite a lot of you there. So let's look at capturing rich bugs just before we finish up. So I've gone back into Lab Center. My environment's currently off, so I'm going to start that environment. Now while that environment's starting, I'm going to switch across to the test center. And the test center is where our testers spend most of their time now. And in the test center, we see there are some automated tests and some manual tests. I'm going to go over here and say that I'm going to work with this particular manual test. Normally there's a lot more. I'm going to go and say that I'd like to move across into testing phase, choose manual, choose the test, and I'm going to run that test now with options. I can choose the build configuration. Down here, I'm going to choose my test settings. That's the data collectors that I want to use. I'm going to now choose the environment that I want to actually execute these tests in. And I can be choosing an environment that has 32-bit clients or an environment that is pre-installed with a year's worth of data. And I'll say run and hope that environment's up and running behind the scenes now. Now the Microsoft Test Runner pops over to the left and guess who was just a wee bit too quick for the environment. I'm actually going to choose to jump out of there. Jump back over here. Still starting. So I can forgive it for having that little issue. And I had really wished now that I had preempted this and said start about 5 minutes ago.
But your video not really. Video failure was I actually went to the ALE conference this year. I missed the email saying it was cancelled.
Oh.
Yeah, travelling to work, it's
Excellent. Please stay and talk to me after the session. It was, on the website it was largely because of this wonderful event, TechEd, and rather poor timing. So you'll see that the ALM conference for 2011 is much earlier in the year out of typical conference time. Guys, that's not going to play overly nice with me, so I'm going to cheat. What I'm going to show you is, and I've got about 5 minutes left, I'm just going to switch back across to the test centre. I'm going to say I want to go and run that, and I'm not going to run it with that environment spinning up under the covers. And it's not going to let me do it either.
I think that environment started.
Did it just pop up? Oh, fantastic. Oh, nice. Well spotted. That's me just being impatient. Because we are typically using and working with large virtual machines, these are typically sitting on fairly good boxes under the covers, not generally laptops. So don't get a feel that this is a typical experience with the tool set.
We're very happy with Hyper-V we're on.
Excellent.
Very happy.
Against better judgment, I'm going to just see if we can talk to that yet. That's me being impatient. It's one of those things, the faster you try and make it, the slower you end up making it. Oh, he's just not going to be nice to me today. I should have the task manager running in the bottom corner showing me disk I/O and CPU. That'd be just...
I know how hard it's been.
I do.
So it's okay. It's working really hard.
I've given 4 virtual processors to the VM and left 4 processors for the host. I mean, it's got 12 gig of RAM.
Do you think that VMware support is still in the cards for the near future?
I'm not aware of where they're up to with the VMware support. I would like to believe that that's certainly still being looked at. I've not personally heard that it's been completely dropped at all, and I would be very surprised to hear it was for philosophical reasons. I mean, as I say, it was there in Beta 1, and I think it was simply, you look at the burn down, are we going to get this thing shipped? No. What can we cut? And that's always a terrible decision. Okay. Control-Alt-Delete. I was feeling very proud of myself, just having that little bit of time up my sleeve to sneak that last demo in, and I'm paying for it now. Bear with me, it is worth seeing. Come on. And all I need is my little test agent to pop up here and say he's happy, and then it'll be less than 2 minutes away. No, that's okay. So the agent's running, and by the time I count to 5, I'm an optimist. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Oh, he's just not going to be nice to me. All right, guys. All I was going to show you there in that very last section was to go into Test Manager. I was going to say I want to go and run that test. I'll give it one last go before we call it a bust. Ooh. I'll go in there and say I want to start the test. Now our test is going to go in and say, well, to run this test, I want to go and connect to the environment, please. Now they don't need to know RDP, they don't need to know SCV, MM or Hyper-V. We connect across to the environment. And what I want to do there is to find, for this web application, just the URL. I can move between each of the machines, if there were multiple machines in there. Pop up. And I'm going to go in there and say that I'm going to mark this as a failure. So I'm going to fail the test that hasn't really started yet. I'm going to provide a comment as to why this test failed. We know that our developers will never believe me, so I'm going to go up here and I'm going to capture part of the screen. And I'm going to include that in my bug report. And then the more significant thing is take an environment snapshot. So in addition to just the screenshot, I want to take a snapshot of that environment. I want to grab a link to the snapshot, an LVR link, and I want to add that LVR link into the bug report, please. Now with all of that, ideally it's going to take our developers a much less time to go and find the root cause of the problem. So I'll take that snapshot, I'll then go and submit that bug to the testers, and they'll have the screenshot, they'll have IntelliTrace logs, they'll have action recordings, they'll have video, they'll have the ability to double click and go right back to this environment. What do you think? Guys, I'll have to call that quits to allow you to get to the next session. I know there's very tight times between them. Thank you very much for staying to the end and enjoy your tech ed.